In this comparative study, I will use a feminist film theory to examine how representations of womanhood and sisterhood are influenced by their cultural context, as seen in the 2019 American film Little Woman, directed by Greta Gerwig, and the 2015 Turkish film Mustang, directed by Deniz Gamze Ergüven. While Little Woman follows the lives of four sisters during and after the Civil War, Mustang showcases how a group of sisters tried to veer away from societal expectations in Turkey. However, in both films, sisterhood is what shelters them from patriarchal forces despite the gender roles imposed on them. Little Woman is an adaptation of the book by Louisa May Alcott written in 1868. She wrote this book during the Civil War. Gerwig effectively showcases the change in the depiction of women in society. As a feminist filmmaker, Gerwig intentionally portrays topics like gender inequality with the portrayal of four strong female characters. Though set in a time period where women had few legal rights, Gerwig's adaptation is infused with contemporary feminist ideals. She decides to change certain aspects of the book and the film, like the choice of using a non-linear narrative. The film switches between the different time periods of the March sisters' childhood and their adulthood. This allows viewers to witness the sisters' growth. The change in narrative can be noted as the scenes of their childhood have warm hues evoking nostalgia, while their adulthood has cooler tones. Gerwig also challenges the traditional narrative structure by adding connotations about money and owning the copyright to Jo's book, which is contemporary for the 19th century.
Now I've decided. I want to own my own book.
Furthermore, there was a movement of transcendentalism during the 19th century which emphasized individualism and self-reliance. Mustang, directed by Deniz Gamze Ergüven, follows the lives of five sisters who live in a patriarchal society in Turkey. Ergüven stated that something specific she wanted to illustrate is the filter of sexualization in which women are perceived. In Laura Mulvey's essay, Visual Pleasure in Cinema, she coins the phrase male gaze. The male gaze operates through a filter of sexualization as it objectifies women by presenting them as objects of desire and pleasure for men in films. Shots like close-ups on female body parts contribute to the sexualization of females in films. This links to Mulvey's ideas of to-be-looked-at-ness, as she states that Hollywood films strive to emphasize women as objects for heterosexual desire and as objects to be served and desired by men. The male gaze objectifies women where they are seen based only on their attractiveness instead of their intellect and agency. Little Woman and Mustang go against the traditional lack of agency, while female characters are given roles as love interests rather than active participants in their own narratives. In the opening scene, the girls are performing David Bruce or chicken fighting. In Turkey, there are more conservative cultural norms and obsession with sexual purity. Women are seen as vulnerable targets that need to be protected and are required to show modesty to not bring shame to the family. Their sexual purity is guarded by men to ensure the family's honor, and women are expected to remain virgins until marriage. Mustang exposes how women have little say in their lives. It also features differences in the rule setting of Turkey, as it is more conservative than the attitudes in Istanbul. Mustang discloses how women's bodies are often scrutinized with societal norms and the importance of chastity as they view women's bodies as objects of control. Ergüven discusses how everything that has something to do with femininity is reduced to sexuality. Both films portray the opposition to traditional gender roles. They also offer perspectives of the female gaze. Female gaze prioritizes the experience of the woman, depict them as complex individuals with their own motivation and desires. In Little Woman, each sister is represented differently, exhibiting their different interests and a different version of womanhood. Little Woman shows each sister's journey to fulfillment and having a choice of what they want to do with their life. Little Woman offers multiple examples of femininity and subverts the male gaze through diverse representations. Jo's interest in writing and she reveals a different perspective as throughout the film she continuously expresses her intent of not wanting to marry. Beth is quiet sister and peacemaker who loves music. She's prioritizing her family over herself. Beth's conflicts are more simple compared to other sisters, representing her incest and shy nature. Meg is the older sister and she follows a more traditional path, as she wishes to marry and have a family. Her more modest clothing represents her hidden societal norms. Amy's seen as wanting to paint but also expressing her intent of wanting marrying which helps support her sisters. Amy's closest are brighter, which represents her desire to flourish within societal expectations. After Lori shames her for wanting to marry Fred even though she's in love with him, she tells him that for a woman, marriage is an economic proposition. By adding to the movie, Gerwig demonstrates how there weren't many economic opportunities for women in the 19th century besides marriage. The almost exhibits how economic independence for women is very limited, and marriage is seen as a way to ensure economic security.
So don't sit there and tell me that marriage isn't an economic proposition, because it is.
In Mustang, the sisters are forced into arranged marriages and expected to learn the duties of being a wife. Their grandma brings in many women to teach them essential skills of being a wife, like cooking. Their education is sacrificed to learn household activities, which is deemed more valuable for a woman. Despite this, the sisters resist the societal structures imposed on them. This can be seen through the juxtaposition of the sound of their laughter. Their jokes indicates their acts of resistance against authority. The differences of cultural representation of gender can also be seen through their clothing. In Little Woman, Jo's choice of clothing represents her defiance of traditional femininity. Jo is sometimes seen wearing Laurie's clothing, reflecting her rejection of the constraints on women in the 19th century, while in Mustang, the sisters are forced to wear dresses that conceal their figure. This represents how Mustang explores the effects of the male gaze on the sisters as they are physically confined. Because of their actions at the beach, although innocent, they are forced to conform themselves into traditional women because of the judgment of others. This exposes how women are forced to take into account how their behavior and actions might be perceived by men. This further depicts how the male gaze controls the lives of women. The role of sisterhood in feminist portrayals is of solidarity and breaking patriarchy. Representation of sisterhood in films can impact female spectatorship by offering examples of empowerment. Sisterhood is reverse the male gaze by focusing on the dynamics between the female characters. Throughout both Little Women and Mustang, the female protagonists find comfort through sisterhood. Both see their shared experiences as driving forces to navigate societal pressures, and both films represent how sisterhood prevails in the face of adversity. In Mustang, sisters resist and defy the expectations set on them. Mustang presents their resilience to sisterhood. As the girls are accused of acting sexually inappropriate, the house is turned into a prison by the uncle and essentially a wife factory. The sisters protect each other from punishment and rules imposed on them. Their grandma and uncle enforce patriarchy. Their grandma believes she's secure in their future by preparing them for marriage. Their uncle has direct authority over them as he is a male head because of their parents' death. He enforces patriarchy by using violence and sexual abuse, demonstrating his authority and control over them. The sisters essentially resist the male gaze by maintaining their individuality and personality even when they are forced to conform into one. Their confinement causes their bond to strengthen. They find strength through one another to rebel against their uncle's restrictions. One example of their defiance is when they attend a soccer game. Ergüven gave the film the title Mustang because a Mustang is a wild horse that symbolizes the 5 female protagonists, and the village sisters are like a herd of Mustangs galloping through. Little Women showcase their reliance on each other for emotion and support. There are many close-ups and when the sisters are having conversation to showcase their emotions. The cinematography also resists the male gaze. One specific scene is when Amy first sees Laurie. The scene is shot in slow motion, normally done to present women as objects of desire in films, but Little Women subverts the norm as this is seen in Amy's perspective. In both films, the death of one of their sisters pushes the narrative and propels the main protagonist to establish agency. In Little Woman, Beth encourages Jo to keep writing, and after her death, it encourages Jo to write about her family's struggles, leading her to writing Little Woman. In Mustang, the death of East further pushes Lale to find a way to get her and Noor out. Lale had asked a Sonic teacher how to drive so she could escape to Istanbul. There, she finds her teacher, Miss Diglik. She represents a beacon of hope for Lale as she represents a path that isn't based on marriage. Miss Diglik also represents a child inside freedom and a more modern version of womanhood. Normally in films, the ending of female characters is limited to death and marriage. While her other sisters do constitute to this, the ending changes for Noor and Lale, where they are able to escape. Because of the death of both East and Beth, they are exempt from the marriage plot, where the central conflict revolves around the romantic relationships of the characters. Both films remind us of the importance of sisterhood in overcoming societal challenges and challenging patriarchal structures. Both films use cinematography to highlight female perspectives and aspirations, aside from having women present as objects for male pleasure. A recurring visual motif was a focus on hands through cinematography. Close-up shots of their hands represented their individuality. The shots of Jo's hands, usually stained with ink, represent her defiance of societal norms. Additionally, Meg's gloves represent her social aspirations, as the glove appears in scenes at events where she is talking to tutors. This represents her pressure of wanting to conform to societal norms and her focus of fitting in. Another visual motif that occurs in both films is when the female characters cut their hair. In Mustang, Lale cuts her hair as an act of defiance and a symbol for a step towards freedom. In Little Woman, Jo cuts her hair, going against traditional femininity, as long hair is often associated with beauty. In Mustang, the painting often depicts the sisters together. This emphasizes their sisterhood and further demonstrates their shared experiences. Medium shots are used when the sisters interact with each other to show their connection. The cinematography also focuses on telling the story of their rebellion against society and highlights their determination. The use of cinematography in the film additionally emphasizes the impact that these forced implications have on them. There are high-angle shots deployed to present the sisters as vulnerable. As they are shown together, Mustang makes it easy to stop thinking about the 5 girls as individuals. Although it does focus on their determination, the cinematography also features their lack of personal freedom. The tight framing and limited spaces indicate the social restrictions on them. The visual motif in Mustang is the car kicks. This illustrates Lale's pursuit of freedom. Both films subvert from traditional representations of women in film.
Flip-flops.
That kitty girl is hot. She might even be hotter than Regina George.
I hear Regina George is dating Aaron Samuels again. The two were seen canoodling at Chris Iso's Halloween party, and they've been inseparable ever since.
And instead exhibits them as complex individuals beyond normal stereotypes. The films present the feminist film theory as they unveil the experiences that women face. In Little Women, it subverts the traditional aspect of women's main goal to be marriage and instead depicts their intellectual pursuits. It also subverts against traditional endings as it allows Jo to pursue her writing career and get married. Mustang subverts traditional representations by focusing on the perspectives of the sisters and criticizes patriarchal traditions. The ending changes for Nora and Lally as they escape from arranged marriages. In conclusion, both Little Women and Mustang portray the representation of sisterhood through different cultural contexts and exhibits acts of feminist film theory. While Little Women is focused on sisterhood as they find their individual paths and aspirations, Mustang focuses on the necessity of sisterhood through patriarchal adversity in Turkey.